Good morning. I'm Stratos Botos, and this is Sunday morning. If I said to you the name Mahler, you might come back and say, brilliant composer, pianist, musician, and you would be right. But what if I said to you Alma Mahler? You might say, Gustav's wife, mother of their children? Well, you would be correct. But there's a lot more to Alma Mahler than just Gustav's wife. Today we'll discover and get behind the scenes of Alma's life as a composer, as a musician, back in the day. Alma Mahler, born August 31st, 1879, in Vienna, Austria. There are many thoughts and many biases about Alma Mahler. Some have written books about her, books titled Malevolent Muse or The Art of Being Loved, known for all the men that she loved. She was labeled as a femme fatale, free woman that ruined Gustav's life. Mary Charette wrote the book Ecstasy, wanted to write women back into history, but was discouraged because reading her journals, Alma's journals, show she wasn't a bad person after all. How did things start? Well, as a young woman, Alma grew up in Vienna at the center of music and art during the secession movement with well-known popular parents. She grows up with even bigger names all around her. She was homeschooled. Great pianist, recommended for the Vienna Conservatory. Sadly, her parents couldn't afford that, nor did they feel it was necessary for a woman to attend conservatory. But that was okay with Alma because she didn't want to play other people's music. She wanted to compose. Charming, witty woman. So she wrote a lieder, an art song. She studied with Selinsky as her private tutor, a famous composer who saw her gift. He fell in love with her. She committed to be a composer and in Vienna. And this requirement means you cannot get married. Author Mary Charette tells us a little bit more. Mary, what more can you tell us about Alma Mahler that we may not already know, that you uncovered through your writing in your book?
All right. Well, Alma Schindler Mahler was a female composer, muse, and life artist. So she was one of the most controversial women in the early 20th century. She was like the it girl of turn of the 20th century Vienna. Her husbands and lovers included composer Gustav Mahler, architect and Bauhaus founder Walter Gropius, artist Oskar Kokoschka, and poet and novelist Franz Werfel. But none of these men could truly claim to possess her because she was her own woman to the last. But she didn't start out that way. She started more conventionally as a very, very gifted, introspective, cerebral, creative young woman. I fell in love with her diaries, and she really, really wanted to be a composer. And so she was really working hard in that way. She was studying with Alexander von Semlinsky, who was her mentor and also her lover, but her parents disapproved of them and wouldn't let her marry him. But she really, really wanted to be a composer, and she was making progress. And then Gustav Mahler, the great composer, who is 20 years older than her, actually 19 to be precise, years older than her, fell in love with her at a dinner party and swept her off her feet and kind of, kind of swept her up in this whirlwind courtship that was so romantic and passionate she couldn't resist. And he was like a rock star. He was like the court opera director of Vienna, which was, you just have to imagine like the hottest rock star kind of sweeping you off your feet. And
in 1908, things in Vienna were getting a little raw. Mahler was subject of anti-Semitic hate, and a campaign was formed against him, forcing him to resign his position at the Vienna Opera House and accept a new position in the States, New York City. Now, Alma and her husband Gustav were out of Austria, where women, and in a place such as New York, where women didn't just support men, not in the way it looked in Austria. In New York, a place where women are so strong, caused Alma to have a bit of a revelation. To her was that Mahler should never have asked her not to compose. She never should have agreed to that. Mahler and Gustav suffered some tragedy. One of their two children remained sick and got better. However, the other one, the oldest daughter, passed away. Alma had a very difficult time handling this and took on some guilt of her own for her daughter's passing. At the encouragement of Gustav, she returned to Vienna, where she would rest at a massage parlor for a respite and recollection of her thoughts. Back to Vienna in the summer of 2008 is where Alma met Gropius. Gropius was kind and understanding to her. They really connected. They seemed to understand each other. They started an affair. Gropius was an influential individual and one of the best known of the architectural movement. When Mahler found out upon her return to New York from a letter that Gropius sent, he was devastated. He was surprised. She was so unhappy with their arrangement. He had no idea. Mahler was so distraught about this affair, he decided he needed to go see somebody. And in those days, who do you go to see when you have relationship problems? Well, none other than Sigmund Freud. Went to see him and let her know what was happening. To which Freud replied, "She is unhappy. Let her do what it is that she wants to do. If you want her back, then you must support her and ensure that she has all the happiness she desires, even if that is through composing music." Mahler was on board for sure. He begged Alma to stop seeing Gropius. She agreed, and he began to support her. She began writing her music. He ensured that she got on stage to perform her music. And he also ensured that she was able to publish 14 lieders, and 3 more are published after her life. Gustav died in 1911, and Alma, having some of her works composed, began to date Robert Kokoschka, a famous artist. One of his most famous paintings was Bride of the Wind. It was a painting about them. Their marriage was interesting and turbulent, up and down. He was possessive. Some might even say a little aggressive. And so after some time, she did end that relationship with Kokoschka. Women composers such as Alma Mahler aren't celebrated that often, not in their time and not even today. But we caught up with Lisa Dell, part of the San Francisco Orchestra, who's going to be recognizing some of the former world composers of women, including Alma Mahler. Lisa, Alma Mahler is such an interesting person. Can you tell us Who do you think she is?
So Alma Mahler, a composer in her own right before she became a Mahler. Later on, married Gustav Mahler, and if you look deep into her history, you can see that she has lots of famous suitors and lovers, including Schoenberg and other notable names.
Wow.
When she married Gustav, he was Mahler, he wanted to be the big composer in the family, and it wasn't until he really listened to her songs and realized she was worth supporting as well. So she did squeak out a few works that we are still hearing today. And so we're going to revive those.
And why do you suppose such a small amount of works are performed by her even today?
I think still, even today, I find myself saying it's 2023. Women should be equal in this space. But then I was saying that in 2022 and in 2015 and back we go. And it's really just a reminder that every step forward women make, there were women throughout history working on those same steps. And I think we look at our own short history of the women's movement and women like Alma and other rock star composers from her time were their contemporaries with their husbands and friends. And yet we choose to play Mozart and Mahler before we look any further.
And why do you suppose such a small amount of works are performed by her even today?
I would say just from California Symphony's perspective, when we look at the history of classical music, we realize there are these lost stories of the composers that were there with Mozart, like Mariana Martinez, and Alma Mahler with Gustav Mahler. And so our music director, Donato Cabrera, is really great at looking at that full history and programming concerts that give that history versus just saying, we'll stick a Mahler symphony here and the audience will come. No, let's tell our audience the story of music at that time. And so this concert is really filling in those gaps.
After Alma's relationship ended, along with Kokoschka, she found herself back in the arms of Gropius, the man she was cheating on Gustav with. They get back together again, the famous architect. They marry, but she has another affair, this time with Franz Fervel. And her and Groping agree to divorce. Franz Fervel was a writer. They marry in Australia and they live a happy life, that is, until World War II and the Nazis take over. Fervel is in Italy at a retreat. She is able to speak to him and sneak him out. They settle in France. That doesn't last long as World War II begins. They escape to Lisbon, to Portugal, and eventually gain passage to America. It is believed most of her music is lost during this time frame. And they live in California for the years following, where Fervel eventually dies. Not before putting out some great screenplays and shows that Alma was able to help write and compose. Now this budding socialite decides she's going to move to New York, where in New York she finds her place, hosting salons and other artists. She is surrounded by her own music and now living as a socialite. During her lifetime, she was either well-loved or hated, accused of being a pro-Nazi and accused of being anti-Semitic. But she was also a strong, influential woman who rebelled against convention. Alma was enjoying her time in New York and other artist experiences, playing for the elite and them enjoying her company. She was a brilliant pianist, described as how her music is on a convergence, and it starts to be played across the world. Sadly, Alma dies at the age of 84 in New York in 1964, just as her music is taking off. We have, for you to listen to, one of her art songs. How does one take the complex, complicated life of Alma Mahler, composer, artist, pianist, wife of many, mother of two? How does one summarize her life and put it in a short story? Lisa Howes does just that.
She was a child prodigy who outplayed the men on piano, but her mother raised her for marriage, not music. And the world told her composing was not for girls, that she could inspire but never lead. Still, she played, writing songs in secret, dreaming of an opera no woman had ever finished. Then she married a genius, Gustav Mahler, who made her choose the music or me. She chose him and locked her songs away. Her first kiss was with Gustav Klimt. Her lovers were the greatest artists and painters of the age, men who worshipped her, admired her, and sometimes drove her to madness. One lover became so obsessed he built a life-size doll in her image and destroyed it in a fit of longing when she left. Still, she tried to play. For years, she was the muse, never the composer. She buried 2 daughters, nursed 2 husbands through death. She crossed the Pyrenees on foot at night to flee the Nazis, carrying her daughter and a manuscript in her coat. She lost everything, her home, her country, her name. But through it all, she played. And late in life, in a quiet apartment above East 73rd Street, Alma sat down at the piano again. And when she did, the world finally listened.